March 24th, 1962, 12-round savage beating that ended the life of Benny Kid Paret in New York's Madison Square Garden. It was in defense of his NBA welterweight championship belt against Emile Griffith, a man who he took the title from in a previous fight. Emile Griffith was a 5-time world champion. Phenomenal fighter was Emile Griffith. But what was interesting about this fight? It was the third fight between these two men and became a grudge match. It was on ABC Fight of the Week. It was a televised fight. And during those days, you had sponsors, Patch Blue Ribbon and Gillette Razor, Wednesday night and Friday night fights. The referee was Ruby Goldstein. The ring announcer was Johnny Addy. It took place 2 minutes and 9 seconds in the 12th round. And the trainer for both men was Gil Clancy for Emile Griffith and Jose Torero for Benny Kid Paret. Both men obviously were called into the State Athletic Commission after this fight was over. And Ruby Goldstein was called in as well. And most observers who watched this on television wanted to boycott boxing, wanted to end the game, because it was disturbing to a lot of people. Because one of the cameramen had gotten a close view shot of Benny Kid Paret with his eyes rolling in the back of his head. And his face was twitching. And it was obviously not for daytime television. But the big question went to the trainer, Jose Torero. Now, Edwin Viruet is an outstanding trainer in Gleason's gym. He was trained by Jose Torero. And Edwin Viruet had faced Roberto Duran twice. He had a brother by the name of Adolfo Viruet, who fought Sugar Ray Leonard. Edwin Viruet trained Glenwood the Real Beast Brown, who was a welterweight, wound up becoming a champion, lost his title to Meldrick Taylor. And then he also lost his title to a fighter by the name of the Thin Man, Maurice Blocker. Alex the Destroyer Stewart was another fighter that Edwin Viruet would train. He lost to Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson and others, but he was an outstanding fighter. He was 24-0 with 24 knockouts when he faced Evander Holyfield. And Edwin Viruet had told my dad and I in Gleason's gym the story of the night of March 24th, 1962. He had explained to us that his trainer told him that what had happened to Emile Griffith was that Emile Griffith was in rage. And when he took Benny Kid Paret to the corner, he hit him with almost 27 unanswered punches. And they tried to blame the commission for it because the ring post didn't have any padding during those days. And he stated that the back of the head had banged into the ring post. Benny Kid Paret had developed a clot in the back of his head. And for many years, Emile Griffith always stated he never meant to kill him. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, and I want to continue the saga of Benny Kid Paret and Emile Griffith with you right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. What a fight, what a night of this tragic ending of Benny Kid Paret. Emile Griffith, name was Alfonso. He was born February 3rd, 1938, St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. He stood 5'7.5" and he weighed 144 to 162 pounds. Now, he was managed by Gil Clancy and Howard Albert. He was trained by Gil Clancy and Sid Martin. Now, Emile Griffith was a very good boxer in New York Golden Gloves. He had 23 world championship bouts, defeated such men as Nino Benvenuti and Teddy Wright, Stanley Kitten Haywood, Yama Bahama and Casper Ortega, Gypsy Joe Harris and Izzy Logard, Joey Archer, Dick Tiger, Ralph Dupass and Brian Surtees, Don Fulmer, Florentino Fernandez, Luis Rodriguez and Holy Mims, and Benny Kid Paret. Emile Griffith was entered into the Boxing Hall of Fame in 1985 and the International Hall of Fame in 1990. I had the pleasure of knowing Emile Griffith. I remember a story, my dad and I saw him on a train. I had to go buy a new car. And we were going to Queens. And we ran into him on a 7 train going to Flushing. At this point, we had already knew Emile Griffith. Knew him well enough to talk straight with him. And we asked him, are you still feeling the effects of the Benny Kid Paret fight? Because at that point in time, they were doing a documentary on that fight, and they needed his approval. And they were having difficulties getting the approval that they needed. And Emile Griffith told us he didn't mean to kill the man, and he didn't want to be portrayed as a man who killed another man with vigorous intent. So we asked him, Emile, what really happened? Why did you feel the way you felt that night? And he told us. This is exclusive. He told my dad and I that he was spotted coming out of a peep joint by a reporter. And the reporter went back and reported it. He was on his way to New York's Madison Square Garden in promotion of the Benny Kid Paret fight. And he told the reporter that he went through the wrong door. He meant to go in the one door and he went through the wrong door. So he was coming out of the door he should have never went in. If you can read between the lines. There's 2 different spots. So the reporter went back and he told some people. And when Emile Griffith got into the ring, because during those days you had maybe 15 to 20 fighters with suits on who would wave to the crowd, and it was a way of promoting themselves. So Emile Griffith and Benny Kid Paret were there to promote their fight. And when Emile Griffith was called into the ring, Benny Kid Paret was already in the ring. So there was a slot open for Emile Griffith between 2 men. It was Jimmy Braddock and Emile Griffith. And between Emile Griffith and Jimmy Braddock, you had Benny Kid Paret. And Benny Kid Paret kept heckling Emile Griffith. Called him a maricon. And Emile Griffith couldn't understand why he was being called that, because he didn't even know that word got out that that reporter had seen him. And it got to a point where it was getting out of hand. And you had the promoters who actually thought this would be something good. And the matchmaker, Teddy Brenner, they all went with it. It was good promotion. So Emile Griffith had faced Benny Kid Paret April 1st, 1961. It was 13-round knockout, Miami Beach, for the World Welterweight Championship belt. June 3rd, he would face Casper Ortega, 12-round knockout. July 29th, he'd be in the ring with Yama Bahama. Yama Bahama was from the Bahamas. Pretty decent welterweight. Defeated him in 10 rounds. September 30th, he would find himself in a ring with Benny Kid Paret. 15 rounds. He would lose his welterweight championship belt to Benny Kid Paret. And that's when the taunting started. So at this point, Benny Kid Paret was the champion. But what little people realize is that Benny Kid Paret, as welterweight champion, went up to the middleweight championship division as welterweight champion to face Gene Foreman. And Gene Foreman gave Benny Kid Paret such a savage beating. Amazing. It was on a Saturday, December 9th, 1961, Las Vegas Convention Center. The announcer was Chuck Hall. And Gene Foreman, at this point in time, he was 30 years of age at the time when he fought Benny Kid Paret. He had 7 title defenses. Middleweight champion. Stood 5'7" and he had a 69-inch reach. Weighed 159 3/4 pounds. But on the other hand, Benny Kid Paret, a record of 34-12, 10 KOs. He was stopped 3 times. That's his total record. And he was 5'7", 69-inch reach. But he was a welterweight. And the beating he took that night for 9 savage rounds was appalling. And he had an obligation to defend his title against Emile Griffith. His trainers state later on that they told him that he shouldn't take the fight. And he said he wanted to keep his obligation. Now, Benny Kid Paret is not here to make that statement. But the statement was made in his behalf by his trainers. And it was such a savage beating that he could have used more time to recover. The trainer never stopped the fight. And this would cause Benny Kid Paret further damage. So when he met Emile Griffith on the night of March 24th, 1962, after having Emile Griffith down in the 12th round, the round previous, I should say, he would suffer a beating beyond beatings. It was worse than 1948, Ike Williams and Bo Jack. Bo Jack has suffered 24 punches unanswered. Paret, 27. And Ruby Goldstein was the referee. It was such a night that most people wouldn't forget. Sometimes a trainer knows when it's time. Unfortunately, Benny Kid Paret wouldn't be around to have another title opportunity. And Emile Griffith would meet Benny Kid Paret's son in the park. And his son told him, "I forgive you." Because Emile Griffith said, "I never meant to kill him. We're in a sport called boxing." And he said some mean things to me, and I reacted as a fighter. And Benny Kid Paret's son told Emile Griffith, "I respect you. You see, it's the trainer's job sometimes to save you from yourself." Benny Kid Paret felt he had an obligation for his people to defend his title against Emile Griffith. He had just suffered a tragic beating from Gene Foreman, who outweighed him several pounds. It's funny how history repeats itself. Give you a little background on Benny Kid Paret. Benny Kid Paret, his name was Bernardo. He was born March 14th, 1937, in Santa Clara, Cuba. He died April 3rd, 1962 in New York's Madison Square Garden. He stood 5'7.5" and he weighed 145 to 157 pounds. He was a very tough, very strong fighter. Had a pretty good defense. He was in the ring with fighters such as Emile, Griffith, and Don Jordan. For Jaco Thompson, which was a very good fight, by the way. Garnett Sugar Hart, Barry Allison, and Victor Zalazar. Rudy Sawyer. But in 1961, December 9th, he would find himself in a ring with Gene Foreman, who was a middleweight champion of the world. He had the NBA strap when he defeated the great Sugar Ray Robinson. He was the only man to knock out Carmen Basilio twice. He would knock out Joe Maselli and other very good fighters at that time, but he had a war with Dick Tiger. Fight of the year, the 2 times they fought. Gene Foreman was a real fighter. He's most notably known receiving the perfect punch of a left hook by the great Sugar Ray Robinson when Ray Robinson would regain his title from Gene Foreman. But Gene Foreman was some fighter. Benny Kid Paret would take it to the chin up until the 9th round. He would suffer a tragic beating. But he would recover from that fight. And he would go on to face Emile Griffith, March 24th of that following year. It was in New York's Madison Square Garden. He was stopped in 12 rounds. Boxing is my favorite sport. You got a lot of warriors. But it's also a sport that you have to respect. It's a sport that you have to make sure you are 100% before you step into that ring. Because there's no mercy in that ring. Nor should it be. May the best man win. And that's what you would have to live with. As long as you continue your boxing career. Joe Louis has suffered a knockout in the 12th round in 1936 over Germany's Max Schmeling. They called him the Black Yulin. It was something he decided he had to do. Even though he won a title from Jimmy Braddock in 1937, he had to get that back from Max Schmeling because he was a people's champion. He didn't care about the title. His mother told him when he decided to stop his violin lessons, if you're going to do this, give it all your thought and heart. And never let your people down. So I can definitely understand the mind thought of Benny Kid Paret. Now, just to show you an illustration, Emile Griffith is to your right, and Benny Kid Paret is to your left. And it was said to me by Edwin Virouette, who he was told by his trainer, that Benny Kid Paret had hit his head on the pole. And that's what really did him in. And you can see here, referee Ruby Goldstein, behind Emile Griffith. You have to be in between both fighters at the stoppage of a fight. And these are Benny Kid Paret's handlers coming to their aid. At this point in time, Benny Kid Paret, organs are shutting down. And if I had a chance to speak with Emile Griffith, which I did, I would tell him, you did what you had to do. But if I had a chance to speak with Benny Kid Paret, I would tell him, before taking a rematch, make sure you are 100%. Make sure everything in your outfit, in your camp, is 100%. And if you decide to fight him again, Give it everything you got. But make sure you're 100%. This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Salute to my subscribers. Salute to Benny Kid PARET, R.I.P. to him. And Emile Griffith, R.I.P. to him. Peace.